All right, now recently I had a bit of a realization, and this is kind of spawned from the last episode where I just had a really difficult time, getting it out. You may have noticed. And I had a really hard time coming up with a good method for explaining the medium of exchange. And after, thinking about it and really considering what it was that I was trying to say and what I was trying to, it bothered me. I had to get an episode up and I was like stumbling over myself. I knew what I was trying to say, but I was just like, could not get it out. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the roots of that were kind of grounded in a couple of things, actually. And the way I'm going to explain this is through a little bit of an analogy here. Okay, we're going to go back to 8th grade biology class, and I hope this doesn't bother too many of you, but hopefully you remember, and if you don't, then I'll explain it here, but for those of you that were, taught this little hiccup in biological science, I was taught this idea under the phrase embryological parallelism or something like that. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about now is the theory of recapitulation. Okay, it's also known as, like I said, embryological parallelism, although I'm almost sure my textbook called it something else. Parallelism, but I could be wrong. Okay. It's also known as biogenic law or Meckel-Serres law. So let me explain to you. If you don't know what this is, I'll explain it, and then we can go from here, because this is a really good way to kind of convey exactly why this was so difficult for me to kind of figure everything out, and why I'm going to be sort of restructuring this particular length of the STEMPrime episode. So what this is, okay, recapitulation was a theory proposed. I believe it was proposed by Meckel, and then it was actually kind of formalized or put into theoretical practice, I guess, like put into textbooks and stuff by Serres. And what this was, if you don't recall, was the idea that the several stages of a human embryo resembled at different points different biological forms that our ancestors went through, from little worm all the way up to humans, right? And wasn't that bad of a theory, right? It kind of made sense, if you look at the different stages of the human embryo. It does seem to represent different sorts of animals that we had some relation to, that our ancestors were. So this is how we're gonna break this down. Now let's assume that this particular idea was never disproved, that nobody ever went out of their way to formulate alternate hypotheses or try to disprove it or anything like that. We just took it for fact and went with it. Okay. So let's take this to a little bit of a deeper level and consider what may have happened. Like what a logical progression of such a, of taking such a key, I don't know, something that we know now is so very wrong, but following it through logically, how our world could have turned out, kind of an idea. So one of the things that I thought of was possibly pregnant mothers. The baby Einstein thing, right? The listen to Mozart kind of idea. Instead of, just, by the way, which has no merit. It's just, you should know what I'm talking about though, right? Okay. And just to cover myself here, that has absolutely no merit to it. Now, with that understanding in mind, with people having, continued and perpetuated this belief, let's say we have mothers that have started to decide that, listening, putting headphones on their belly at different stages, their choice of sounds that they feed through the headset is, in direct relation to what stage the embryo is at. So, early fishy kind of looking stages, right? You play water sounds, or I don't know. You get the idea, right? You break it down into what are the most pleasing sounds for that particular type of animal that we may have come from, and then play that through a headset, right? You can see that being a thing. You know what I mean? Okay, so for instance, that's one way it could have affected our society. Another way is, abortion, let's say. That instead of, having arguments over when you would abort or when it would be morally acceptable, I guess, to go through with an abortion, you would, base that on what particular stage the embryo was at, and, kind of lay your reasoning out on how, I guess, conscious or alive, and or how much more human that particular evolutionary step is than the previous step, that kind of a thing. So, like, you wouldn't have a problem killing a fish, you wouldn't have a problem killing a little tadpole or a frog or whatever, but maybe when you got more into the realm of early primate looking kind of shapes, then maybe you would feel more uncomfortable with performing an abortion or going through with it, and that could be have been more of a deciding factor. Okay, so you see things like this. All right, okay, roll with me. This is a thought experiment, totally hypothetical, never would really happen. I hope we never regress to a point where that becomes a thing. So this could be one of those things where, a few people question it here and there, but generally everybody accepts it. And now, let's say some guy comes along and launches a YouTube station and builds a whole podcast, right? Calls it a research cast, whatever. And he starts publishing these ideas, and he, his whole basis is that recapitulation is incorrect, and that we should be, considering other reasons for why the embryo looks different ways or whatever. And he starts breaking the videos down, and he does a series, a 4-part series on particularly 3 well-known aspects of recapitulation at that time. And I just totally made these up, had a little fun making them up, putting different words together and playing around, but totally nonsense, okay? So I'm not saying anything legitimate here. This is utter and absolute nonsense, but it was fun to make it. All right, let's say there are 3 obstetric insights. We'll call them the 3 obstetric insights, okay? These are the kind of fundamental, relational aspects of fetal development when looking at it through the eyes of somebody that believes recapitulation, or a culture that believes recapitulation. So let's say the first one is optical morphological delineation. Totally doesn't make any sense. I have no idea what it would even mean, but let's go with it, okay? Digital syndactylitic configuration, web fingers more or less, okay? An assembly of umbilical history. Again, absolutely no meaning to it, but it was fun to come up with it, and whatever. Okay. Now, granted, in this theoretical world that we have, okay, these 3 have everything to do with the ingrained beliefs surrounding recapitulation, but almost absolutely nothing to do with what the actual reality of fetal development is. All right. And so this guy that's publishing these videos and trying to, show everybody that something, there's another way to look at this, decides to do his series on a 3-part series, specifically one episode on each one of these concepts. So obviously he's running into a problem and he doesn't even see it. And the problem is that he's trying to systematically create a relationship between these nonsensical beliefs and the reality of the situation. He's trying to say, this is wrong because blah, 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 blah. This is wrong because blah, blah, blah. This is wrong, blah, 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 right? But he's trying to, tie this in to actual biological development in a way that is just so utterly divorced from, the 2 roads split a long time ago. And you have, the false road is just so far over here, and it's already got a bunch of other branches coming off it and a bunch of other theories and concepts and properties, right? And then you have this other road, which is where we should have gone, where science should have led. And he's trying to bridge these 2 by using these 3 concepts that are divorced from the reality of the situation by several orders. You have your main issue, okay? You have your main problem, which is recapitulation. And that's where everything went wrong. But these 3 silly functions came off of, other ideas that sprung from recapitulation. And I mean, who knows how many orders of separation there are there. And so these were ideas that were conceived of and tied to recapitulation because of how they saw other things in the world and different biological processes. And so they're trying to, reason and create these ideas that seem to them to be fundamental reasons for recapitulation to be a reasonable, idea to hold to and to, spring other sciences from and to recognize as a very logical and solid foundation for any number of things, right? But he's hitting this road because he's trying to take these ideas that are just totally divorced, not only from the reality of the situation, but from the fictional idea that spawned that idea in the first place. They're way over here. And he's trying to kind of make these logical comparisons as to why this isn't working. Now, I hope it's obvious by now what I'm trying to say here. I took the concept of the three functions of money, okay? To me, because I've been doing this for so long, I can see the relationship, and I see what the problem is and whatever. But where I screwed up was that I was taking thermodynamics and what I already know about money and its relation to thermodynamics. And what am I trying to say here? The three functions of money together, you know, as a property of money, or as a sort of, I guess, property of money that we all view as kind of being central to what money is, how it works, that kind of thing. But I'm trying to connect it to thermodynamics in a way that, you know, one at a time, it's just not a possibility. Like, I was stretching it. I'm trying to stretch connections that I need to come back down to money and make that connection. Once that connection is valid and verified and solid, and I've presented it to you in a way that, you know, is palatable and makes sense and it's not confusing, then we can go and talk about the three separate functions of money, and then see, oh, I see why this is like so silly and not making sense. Do you know what I mean? And that's, I think, the sort of the left turn that I made. That was where I screwed up on this. So